To understand Jesus' parable about wineskins and garment patches, you not only have to appreciate some facts about garments and how to store wine, you also have to know that the Messiah was going to set up a new covenant or agreement with his people. The prophet Jeremiah tells us about this in Jeremiah chapter 31. He says, "The days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the people of Israel and with the people of Judah. It will not be like the covenant I made with their ancestors when I took them by the hand to lead them out of Egypt, because they broke my covenant, though I was a husband to them, declares the Lord." Note that phrase, though I was a husband to them. So, what's the context of this parable? Well, Matthew, the tax collector, had decided to follow Jesus, and he held a party in Jesus' honour. This meant Jesus was partying with people who were called sinners and tax collectors. Now, according to the Jewish oral law, such behaviour meant that you caught their uncleanness. It was like a disease. You were infected with their impurity. Now, Jesus didn't abide by the Jewish oral law. He considered the oral law just to be the traditions of man and not from God. His response to the religious leaders was, "It's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. But go and learn what this means." And he quotes from the Old Testament, "I desire mercy, not sacrifice, for I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners." Then the disciples of John thought they would raise their matter of concern. They were with Jesus now because, John the Baptist had been put into prison and Jesus was considered to be his successor. But they had noticed that Jesus and his disciples attended a lot of parties, which meant they weren't doing what they had done with John the Baptist. That is, fast. Now, to fast was to go without food and spend that time instead seeking and longing for the presence of God. Jesus replied by saying, "How can the guests of the bridegroom mourn while he is with them? The time will come when the bridegroom will be taken away from them, then they will fast." In other words, Jesus was saying, you don't fast at a wedding, you celebrate. And that's what we're doing because the bridegroom is now in the building. Now, if you were a Jew, this response would have been, mind-blowing. See, in their Bible, the person who referred to himself as the bridegroom, remember that Jeremiah quote, was none other than God himself. And Israel was his bride. The great prophet Isaiah also said, "For your Maker is your husband. The Lord of hosts is his name, and your Redeemer is the Holy One of Israel. He is called the God of all the earth." See, Jesus was saying that the one that John's disciples were longing for when they fasted, the Messiah of Israel, the Lord of hosts, their Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel, the God of all the earth, was there already in Jesus himself. Then he gives his third parable. He says, "No one sews a patch of unshrunk cloth on an old garment, for the patch will pull away from the garment, making the tear worse. Neither do people pour new wine into old wineskins. If they do, the skins will burst, the wine will run out, and the wineskins will be ruined. No, they pour new wine into new wineskins, and both are preserved." Evidently, the new cloth on the old garment would shrink and tear the old garment. Evidently, new wine expands, especially through the fermentation stage, and would tear the old and brittle and inflexible old wineskins. In other words, he was saying that the old is not compatible with the new. That is the old way of following rules. or practices of fasting, etc., that would bring you closer to God, these weren't compatible with the new way that he was going to create. He was going to create this by his death and resurrection. He was going to create a new way to experience the presence of God. Jeremiah goes on from where I quoted before and explains that the new covenant, what the new covenant is like. He says, "This is the covenant I will make with the people of Israel after that time, declares the Lord. I will put my law in their minds. I will write it on their hearts. I will be their God and they will be my people. No longer will they teach their neighbour or say to one another, 'Know the Lord,' because they will all know me, from the least of them to the greatest, declares the Lord. For I will forgive their wickedness and will remember their sins no more." The new covenant that Jesus was introducing was one where we didn't need a temple or priests or a set of rules or a practice of fasting to experience God's presence. We would know him, every one of us, from the least to the greatest. He would be our God and we would be his people. Would you like to know God that intimately? Then give us a hoy in the comments below. And continue to join me as I look at the other parables of Jesus. God bless.